Hey guys, this is Chick doing a VOD review of a RB6 Siege tournament game on Kafe between DMG versus SCC at the request of DMG. So one of the things I'd like to point out when I do these VOD reviews is to comment on the dynamics that both teams playing, some of the things they did well, some of the opportunities they should work on improving. Purely my perspective and opinion, please don't take my critiques personally. I'm not commenting on the individual capabilities of any of these team members. Most of these guys, I've pre-watched the video. They're very mechanically skilled. They have highlights here where they show their skill and they're playing competitively. So my goal here is just to educate individuals on some of the kind of perspectives I take as a individual who's coached this game for quite some time, and some things that they should consider when attacking and defending on a map like this in competitive play. Without further ado, man, we're going to talk about the bans. So looking at the bans here, you banned the Thatcher, the Jackal, the Maestro, and the Legion. All right, so here's my personal opinion. Your bans are going to vary depending upon whether you're the side that is attacking first or defending. Some good bans always to keep in mind. Some tier 1 bans, especially on the defender side, as in the defenders you want to ban if you're attacking, as Maestro, Mira, Echo. And not in a particular order. All three of those defenders are very strong. Some are more stronger on other sites and maps, depending upon the dynamics of gameplay your team engages in. However, all those defenders, those anchors that have a ton of utility that provide advantage to the defenders, you got to consider banning one of those off the top. Another defender that teams should consider banning is Valkyrie, and here's why. Valkyrie is a unique operator because she uses her black eyes to provide intel, and she can almost always deploy her intel at the very beginning of the round, which means her utility is on the map for the game. Valkyries at a high level have a habit of running out and trading themselves off. So this kind of ties into my perspective on the intangibles, what I call the intangibles of Siege. If a Valkyrie jumps out and trades herself off for Thermite, it's a 4v4. Oh, it's still a tie game, right? I'm not so sure about that. That Valkyrie's got her utility out there in the field, still giving her team great intel, and that Thermite died before he could leverage his utility. He couldn't get his charges on the wall. He couldn't use his flashbangs. Is that really a one-for-one trade? Well, yeah, the body count might say that, but I would argue the defenders have won the utility game, and they're winning in the intangibles. So the intangibles in Siege, the way you got to think about this is a team deathmatch - bomb. The tactics is around the bomb side, but the team deathmatch, is very important. When in doubt, your body count matters. However, the intangibles play into the tactics and the strategy of how you leverage the diffuser to take advantage and really frag out. And those intangibles are broken up into 3 things: space and space control in the form of controlling real estate and angles. The team that controls the most map space controls the gunfights and how those gunfights are fought out. They control the terms of engagement. That's very important. Gives them a competitive advantage. 2 is utility. Whichever team uses their utility the wisest and has utility to use at the end of the round is actually sometimes the team that comes out ahead. I'll get into that. And last but not least is time. This is a timed game, right? Attackers have 3 minutes to plant the diffuser. Defenders have 3 minutes to keep the attackers from preventing the diffuser. So if you're the attackers and you're in DMG, your goal here is to make sure that you spend the right amount, you take the right amount of space while spending the right amount of utility in the right amount of time. And obviously, if you're the defender, you want to do the exact opposite. You want to make sure that the attackers spend a lot of utility and a lot of time for every bit of space they take control on the map, right? Or if they do take control of a small amount of space, in a quick time, you're going to make them spend a ton of utility, right? You're going to maximize those relationships to punish the intangibles. And we'll get into this in the game. So from a defender perspective, going back to bans, those are my call on defense. On offense, I say I call it the flex supports and the hard breachers. What that means is hard breachers, Habana, Thermite, Maverick, all great bans. Also your flexes, Nomad, Capital, Gridlock, Thatcher, those are all good bans. Depends upon your team's playstyle. What I will say is that if you're defending, think about the Thatcher ban and or the hard breach. But if you're attacking, think about what flex role that you don't really want to deal with. I personally recommend always banning the Nomad. I like Nomad's backstory. I like her as an operator, but I think her capability is extremely OP, and OP is being overpowered. Think of it this way. She's got 3 air jabs. That's like having 3 claymores. So it's very hard to run out on her because she's going to have all the runouts around the window that she's playing air jabbed. And if she saves some of her air jabs and uses them on the inside to cover flank watch, she sticks an air jab above a door, what are you going to do? You're just out of luck, man. Unless you got an impact or a C4 or a well-placed evil eye, you're in trouble. There's no way you're getting by that easily, right? So with that being said, she has a heavy influence towards the mid to late game with flank watch. I personally just don't like having to think about that. That's why I always recommend ban the Nomad. All right, so looking at this attacker setup, clearly your entry fragger is going to be Ash and Zofia, potentially the IQ, and then your support is going to be Thermite and Monty. So in this particular setup where you don't know what site they're going first, most teams tend to go bar cocktail. I know that because I'm in spectator mode, and let's be honest, most teams do go up first. They could be going down to Kafe. I always encourage you to consider bringing a Maverick if you're DMG, just because a Maverick and Thermite can open any wall in the game. And the way they do this is Maverick opens a little hole up top, above the reinforcement. Thermite uses his flashbangs, which he should have equipped when Maverick's playing with him, to burn the ADS. Maverick opens his frag grenade, throws it up there, right through his little hole, destroys the wall denial, and then Thermite gets his charge on, puts it on the wall, and Maverick opens up his second grenade, starts cooking it, and he's ready to throw it across the wall in case a bandit or Cade wants to K-trick or bandit trick the wall. And guess what? The wall's open. Yeah, that's a lot of utility, but guess what? If you really need to get the wall open, that works on every wall in the game. Unless there's 2 ADSs. In that case, good thing you got a Monty or an Ash right next to you with also throwables they can use to burn that ADS. Alright, without that being said, let's get to round 1. Alright, I will be skipping some of the operator selection in rounds to the more teachable moments, or these key moments in the round where I feel like there's a really good point that we need to articulate and talk about and review, just to speed up the VOD process. These things take time. My goal here is to, just really hit the highlights and talk about team dynamics. So I won't talk about individual play as much, although I'll point out some critiques and some praises. The goal here is really talking about the mindset of individual roles here on the team. All right, so SCC elected to go bar cocktail, playing up top. They have a pretty respectable selection of operators up top. All right, so I'll be talking about some of the fundamentals, and this might sound somewhat repetitive, but haven't had the opportunity to play with everyone that's in this game, so I'm just going to talk about the fundamentals. I suspect most of the guys in these rounds actually know this thing, but it's just simply for me to make sure that someone who's watching the video that may not be aware of some of the perspectives I'm about to share, to kind of make sure that we're all on the same page and they have line of sight, and they, it's brought to their attention some of the things they should think about when we talk about defending a site and pushing a site. So this is great Crammo work by Penn. I want to give a shout out to Penn. He's doing a great job here in the spectator mode. I really like this viewpoint. This is really the best viewpoint as a spectator in regards to looking at your positioning as a team and then having a coach or someone else review the overall team dynamics. So DMG going up top, opening the hatches, asserting control from the roof down. Kafe is a map where you traditionally are going to have a lot of window play, so going from the roof down is a very viable strategy and recommended on a lot of sites. All right, so before we get any further, let's talk about defender site setup. In RB6 Siege, there's an alpha bomb and a bravo bomb, and the attackers can plant the diffuser on either bomb. So in order to prevent them from taking control of one of those sites very quickly, the defenders need to have control and or a physical anchor, as we'll call it, a defender labeled as an anchor on controlling the space and or playing on site on bravo and alpha. They also need to control what I call the rotate, also the cutoff. Now, why do I call it cutoff position? Well, I call it the cutoff because it's the room that cuts off the ability for the roamers to rotate between sites. It doesn't cut off all of them sometimes, but it cuts off most of them. So which room's the cutoff position? That's a great question. It's this room right here with my mouse cursor. sometimes called piano, sometimes called Christmas tree. I call it by its proper name, cigar lounge. But if you hear me call it piano or Christmas tree, I'm referring to cigar lounge. This room right here with a circle. And the reason why is that this cutoff position in cigar lounge is integral to pushing Bravo, and because it controls the rotates on and off site between Alpha. And what do I mean by that? If someone controls Bravo, and you have line of access to red doors, they control who rotates up red stairs. They have an angle on door to red stairs. They have an angle to white stairs. Now, theoretically, they can't do it in this game because of the castle. But if the castle's not there, they also have an angle to white stairs. They control who goes up and down on this floor. That's huge. On top of that, they can open up this wall, and they have lines of sight to be able to deny freezer rotate and deny this door into Bravo. So by just playing someone right here and having these two walls open, you control all the major rotate spots on this floor. This is the cutoff position for Kafe and Bar. Now, because this is such a critical spot, you're going to want someone to play it. So a typical setup, you're going to have someone watching Bravo, and this mirror has done it correctly. You can play it from a distance, and or you can play it up close here on this cocktail bar. Many people don't know this. I'm going to take a little side note here. The game dynamics have changed in regards to wall bangs. It used to be that your bullets went across the map as long as it was soft surfaces and just lost damage potential with each wall it went through. Now each wall consists of 2 layers, and your bullets can only go through 2 layers. What that means is that the Doc can he can shoot someone and wall bang them in freezer. And what I mean by wall bang is drop rounds through the freezer and kill them through the wall. But if he were to do that over here in Cigar Lounge, if he didn't have these murder holes, it would be very ineffective. He would have to shoot bullet holes in this wall first, and then shoot through bullet holes in this, and then his bullets would have to go through both the bullet holes before he would even have a chance of doing meaningful damage on the person over here in Cigar Lounge. You'd have to mag dump, just to give you an idea of what the time it would take you to do that. So because of that dynamic, it makes these bars that used to be very horrible from a wallbang perspective very viable to play underneath now and use them as cover, because each of these bars has like 4 to 6 sheets or levels of plywood in them. So when you're shooting through this, it's like shooting through 3 walls. It's going to take someone a lot of time to get through this unless they have an explosive. It definitely changed the dynamics. So that's a good spot to play. A lot of people that have been playing the game since year 1 aren't aware of that. I always like to point that out. Getting back on site, what you want is ideally 3 anchors, but I like to call it 2 anchors and a lurker. A lurker is really my way of saying a non-traditional anchor choice, like a Jaeger who's going to play close to sight, and then play more like an anchor off-site, but play this cutoff position to control those rotates accordingly. Ideally, they should always have crossfire opportunities between them. And what do I mean that? That the person on Cocktail who's playing Alpha has that ability to shoot here at White Stairs. Person on the Cutoff and Cigar Lounge has the ability to shoot here at White Stairs. That's a crossfire. That both these individuals have an opportunity to shoot at the same entry points from 2 different angles on site. And ideally, you want that for every rotate and every door that you have going into Alpha and Bravo and on the cutoffs. That can't always be done, but in a perfect world, that's what you want. That's how you should play defense. And when you push a site like this, what you need to do as the attackers, you need to make sure that you're spending the right amount of time at the right amount of utility to take control of this cutoff. Once you have control of cutoff, you can then prep the site for plant and then breach with violence and force of action very quickly. Exert your control over either Alpha and or Bravo, depending upon how you play the cutoff, and then plant the diffuser, call it a day. All right, so we'll comment now on this particular round between DMG and SCC. All right, the Monty drops, using it as a human drone. This is a great aspect. So from a droning perspective on Siege, just to kind of review the fundamentals here, is that your attacker should put their drones during the droning phase on transition points, which are chokeholds in the map. So that way, in the event that if they die during while they're entry fragging, on their entry, they have good drones they can use to make calls that are meaningful calls for the roamers. The remaining support drones are going to use you're going to take a passive peek at site. And by passive, I mean they're not actually going to get on site and scan the bomb and scan the defenders. they're just going to use their drones, even maybe from the lower like pillars, and look up and see what walls are reinforced and see how the site is being set up. And that way, based upon the information that they're feeding back to their IGL, which you should be doing, because when you're droning, you're not just droning for yourself, you're droning for the team. You should be making those calls back to the IGL so you can determine where the utility is being placed between Alpha and Bravo, which one has more utility, which one has less utility, therefore which one is the weak site and which one you guys should focus on and push. That's what should be taking place. Now, as soon as you guys are about to, I say, enter the map or enter the building, ideally your support player is going to drone in your entry fragger, and the entry fragger is going to follow the drones. And your support player in this case is definitely the Thermite. He should be droning in, even maybe with the IQ, droning in the Monty, the Nomad, and the Ash. Now, ideally your 2 entries and your flex are going to go in. Now, you said, hold up, you just told me Monty's going in. Well, in this case, Monty's acting as a flex. A flex is someone who actively supports the entry fragging and actively supports the plant, right? They're not 100% support. So when you think of the terms of like, what's the difference between like a fragger, a flex, and a support? All right, people think of flex as doing a little bit of both, and it's kind of that way. But support, you absolutely need to plant the bomb. Without their utility, you're in trouble. You're gonna have a hard time planting and taking control of the site. Entry fraggers, they use most of their utility, like Sophia, Nomad, Ash. They use their utility to actually open up angles and to destroy the roamers, kill the roamers, and take control of the site space, right? Their utility is mostly to gain control of the space very quickly and control flanks. The flexes have the unique utility, which is, usually like the Kappa Dows, the Gridlocks, the Nomads. It's used to cover flank, and both in the support game when you're playing the bomb and in the roam clear game. So they're allowed to die. It's not as impactful if they die during the roam clear, but it's something you definitely want to kind of keep them alive as long as possible. But because Monty is your flex, he's going to support the entry clearing with the fraggers. So the fraggers should be with Monty. They should drop the hatch with him and be pushing with him, take control of Cigar, which is a mistake, right? The Cigar Lounge is left wide open. One of the mistakes that SCC made is they reinforced castle this, completely gives control to DMG of this critical cutoff point, which they're going to use hopefully to punish them accordingly. All right, good. See, you got the 2 drones right here, but ideally these drones have given, the team has given you a lot of real estate here, and what you want is your entry fraggers to drop the hatch and to take that real estate before anyone has the opportunity to reposition and contest this. And that's not taking place right now, so that's one of the opportunities for DMG, is that when this space is given to you, and it's given to you practically for the low cost of free, no utility, no gunfight, take it, seize it, and don't give it back. All right, I can't hear comms because this is a tournament game, and that's understandable. One thing I will say is that as these drones are going through, you're not just droning for yourself. You're feeding this information back to your IGL and your team. You're telling them there's a mirror here. You should be telling them no one's in freezer, that this wall's opened up, and that Cigar is clear. And you're sharing this information because with this wall open, this allows the Thermite to think about where he wants to use his second charge. Usually I recommend you open this wall to take away the freezer rotates from site, so no one can come down and rotate through wide stairs or wide stairs landing and try to deny a plan on Bravo. So, but with this already open, it gives you some options with how you're going to leverage that utility. Okay, because you guys are playing a Nomad, roam clear is not necessarily really required unless there is one exception. If you know they have a roamer that has a C4, then you have to deal with them. So because the bandit could have a C4, I encourage you to think about roam clearing and killing him first. Other roamers you got to be aware of, Valkyrie, obviously Pulse, Vigil, roamers with impacts, you got to watch them too. So the Vigils with impacts, yeah, maybe they can't kill you, but they can plant deny like ridiculous. They get the same call out. They use their impact to open the floor above them. or the floor beneath you where you're defusing, and they just sit down there and just take you out. So in those scenarios, it's always beneficial to roam clear. However, if you have an advantage like this where you can quickly push site and take control of the cutoff with very little utility very quickly, and you have a nomad or gridlock, it may be advantageous to bypass that, unless they have a C4. They have a C4 you have to think about, and there's things you can do to counter that, but in this particular setup, there's not a whole lot you can do. Planning on top of the bar is not an option with this type of resistance, so you're going to need to deal with the roam with the C4 first. Okay, I think let's go back here. I think opening this castle was a mistake, and I'll explain why. Looks like we opened it. Yep, DMG opened it up with the Ash. So here's the key. With this closed right here, they give you control of this, and it allows one gun to take control of this entire side of the map. Right? So when you're playing here, you have one ACOG, it plays into freezer, it denies all the rotates that, like this bathroom rotate that looks like here. I don't know if that's faultable. I'm going to assume it is. But no one can rotate into freezer to deny the Bravo plant, right? So the goal here is you've made the call. You're going to go for a Bravo plant. You don't want anyone impacting that wall and being able to run through freezer and get this angle on your planter. So by having one person here, they control this entire map. They don't have to worry about this angle because it's castle. They're going to have a huge sound queue in case this goes off. And what this would allow you to do is your thermite to come in, open this wall right here. You guys would have long ACOG line, like ACOG worthy line of sights from Cigar Lounge into Bravo, which would allow you to have a crossfire position on this door from not only Cigar Shop, but also Cigar Lounge. That's going to protect your planner even more. And then not having to worry about that white stairs angle, not having to commit a gun allows one person or two people to play towards Bravo, makes this game very dimensional. In other words, you smoke this out, you plant, you use your ACOGs to force these defenders to take long-range gunfights, and right now only one of them has an ACOG. That's your advantage to do so, and you want to make that happen. But when you open this, you have to be worried about this. Now, it does make this room more powerful because now you can use this to take control of white stairs and prevent rotates from up and down both red and white from this room. However, it requires one more person to play this room, and the importance of keeping this room now is increased. So with that being said, when you change the game like this by opening a castle, you got to think, am I making this room more or less viable to hold and support my planner? Okay, so I don't know if the Monty have smokes. I'm hoping he does. In this type of scenario, when you're here, you're going for the reverse plant. You can get here, crouch, go ahead, throw your smokes. Throw one smoke right here, throw one smoke right here. Smoke this out so they don't have line of sight and they're gonna have to push. Now I understand what you're doing. You're playing this long angle with your guys covering here to help you cover and plant. It's not a bad strat. You're gonna try to get them in these long range gunfights and win with ACOGs. What I recommended, if you know you're going to do this and go for the plant, make sure that you divide this up. Have one person here, have the Ash watching that wide angle, that's good. Have the IQ rotate around a pillar and or heaven and be playing this cross, right? Come around, look at heaven, and if you can, sneak in into pillar right here and then play the cross accordingly. But well played. You did exactly what you needed to. You forced these guys into long-range gunfights, picked them off with the ACOGs, planted the diffuser. Definitely well played by DMG. That's going to be the round, it looks like. Alright guys, I'm going to kind of skip to the action here to decrease the length of this video, make it a little more faster. Okay, SCC went back up to Bar Cocktail. They brought a similar loadout to their first selection. They're going to play the same setup. They're going to have some of the same weaknesses and opportunities. DMG bring in close to the same setup, bring in the sledge over the IQ. Alright, so same type of style of attack. You want to get on the windows. You want to exert control from the skylight and the hatches and open up those areas to take control. Use your Nomad here to protect your flank on red stairs. I think that's ideal. Definitely, it's worth using the Nomad here. I noticed Nomad was playing on the windows. That's also good, using the other two here to control the traditional runouts. Okay, so I will say that kind of the same comment that we made the first round, the Monty is really overextended. Ideally, when you attack in this game, you want to roll in pairs. You want to roll in a pair of two. Your entry fraggers want to roll at least two or more. So you want to have, two teams of two and one player that has like a Nomad that has the capability of covering their own flanks, or you want to roll in a team of three and a team of two and sweep the map accordingly. So just to allow the potential for a refrag. And refrag, what that means is that if you were to die, you should be thinking, is one of my teammates in the position to be able to kill the other guy that killed me within 2 seconds, right? Usually that's like a room over depending upon line of sights, but that's the question you should have, because you should never allow the defenders to go 1-for-1. Defenders want to go 1-for-1 every day, all day, and the reason why is they go for 1-for-1, they're going to win. If it's 1v1 and you have the diffuser, whoever has the diffuser has to plant, right? Eventually, or they're going to lose. And if they plant, they can't fight back, right? So even if it's 2v2 and the attackers have control of sight, one of them has to plant the diffuser. That means that 2v2 really turns into 2 guns versus 1 gun, right? Really more like a 2v1. The defenders have the advantage if they go 1-for-1. And also, if they trade off and the diffuser isn't planted, they win as well. So they want to go 1-for-1. The attackers cannot afford to die without trading off. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't go 1-for-1, but they need to do better than 1-for-1. But they definitely can't lose a 1v1. That puts them at a huge disadvantage, unless they're getting a lot of utility and space for it. Now, that's the intangibles we got to talk about. There's some few one-off situations where you might trade somebody to like bait a couple of C4s and things like that, like high-end gameplay. That's a whole different conversation. Just general principles, though. You want your attackers to do better than 1v1, and the defenders should be happy with a 1v1 trade. Alright, so understand what this Ash is doing. She's going to go underneath and use some vertical gameplay, hopefully to mess up these guys in Cocktail. This is a high-risk play because no one's there to refrag her. So if a roamer were to stumble upon her and there's a 1v1 gunfight, it could go either way. And if the Ash loses, there's just no one there to refrag her, right? So from an attacking perspective, it's high risk. So Krim with the game sense knowledge there, opening the floor up, messing up the guys in Cocktail. Well played. Although it's high risk, it's well played. Ideally, in that scenario, you want the sledge or someone else down there with you to help trade you off. In the event that happens right there. Okay, so real quick, guys, looking at how you want to attack a site. Once you have site control and you start doing the vertical and prep site, you want to push and plant the diffusers. The diffuser should be going down right now. The reason being is, as you can see, the defenders had to rotate down to deal with this vertical gameplay problem they had. When they did so, they left site really vulnerable. It's hard for defenders to multitask unless they're super coordinated. So as an attacking team, what you want to do is you want to prep the site by opening up the long angles with the hard breaches, having your Buck and Ash or Zofia go underneath and start opening the traditional camping spots, forcing the defenders to rotate, and then The attacker should leverage those long angles then to pick off the defenders as they rotate, or make them take long-range gunfights and win those. And as soon as they start getting a pick or two or defenders start to die, without hesitation, you exert your control that you've gained over sight, you take control of that real estate, that space, and you plant the diffuser. Okay, so what wrong here is that this is a very powerful room. This is the cutoff. It covers all the rotates. Nobody was covering the rotates on the site, or the position that the rotates were being covered on wasn't as powerful as this room right here. If you had, this is kind of a prerequisite to planting the diffuser. So let me backtrack to my previous comments. Take control of the cutoff, then you open the long angles, use your ACOGs, then send the guys underneath to buck the floor open or destroy the camping spots. Then you plant the diffuser. That cutoff is key. If you don't respect the cutoff and own the cutoff, and have good control of it before you plant the diffuser, that's a high risk plant. And usually, I will say most of the time, they don't work out. In that particular example, you had two guys on Skylight that weren't able to hold the plant as strong as maybe one of them would have been able to do by himself in Cigar Lounge. That's just something to take into consideration. All right, skipping ahead to the next round. All right, like I said, guys, personal preference. When you're playing this map and Thatcher is banned, I always think you should bring a Thatcher. Thatcher's a very strong operator on this map, being able to destroy a ton of electronics and utility with his 3 MPs. But if he's banned, which is a good ban, I think, for this map, if you're playing defense first, bring the Maverick. Guarantees you're going to get any wall open. Also, if you want to be more aggressive and you want to have an entry flex, a good entry flex would be Habana, right? Entry flex support. She's redundant hard breach, but she's also pretty good entry fragger. So in the event you lose your thermite, you're not in trouble. You still have the capability to open walls. So DMG going up top with the roam clear. Okay, DMG, man, exerting their force from the top down. Good droning. A little slow to secure that real estate. So as the drones go through and these rooms are cleared, people need to be taking control of this real estate as quick as they can before the roamers and defenders are allowed to reposition or contest the space. So Monty's already down there. Should be one or two other entry fraggers right behind Monty, actively moving. Now, because the drones have a head start and this space is moving pretty quick, it's okay if the entry fraggers break up because they have drones in front of them giving them cues, right? So they already know their flanks clear. They know the red stairs is going to be watched. So all they have to worry about is the gunfight in front of them. And because one's going through bar to white stairs and one's going through cigar lounge to white stairs, they're going to meet up at the same spot. So they'll have refragging potential. They know that's okay. They're allowed to do that during the roam clear as long as they're going to rejoin and have that potential to refrag if they get in a fight. All right, there's clearly right now 2 roamers on white stairs. There's the IQ down and controlling cigar. All right, here's the Monty. All right, excellent play. So the Monty is like a broom. You want this Monty to sweep all the roamers into a long sight like this, long range, and then have this IQ swing on them and take them out from this cutoff position. And then the Ash is with the IQ, so these two entry fraggers should be pushing this angle now. Now that the Monty's going to force these roamers out of cocktail into an undesirable rotate down white stairs. That's exactly what happens. Oh, well played by DMG. Well played. All right, the Monty pushes the roamers out here to white stairs. IQ picks one of them off, gets picked off. The Ash comes in and refrags because they're working together. That's exactly how you want to roam clear. The attacker's now got 2 defenders down for 1. It's a 2-to-1 trade. That's exactly what the kind of trade that you want on a roam clear scenario. Clearly, DMG is winning the attack. Okay, as you approach the 1 minute mark, you need to start about prepping site. So 1 minute to 1 minute 20 seconds, that's when you're going to start your prepping process. And you need to be focused on pushing in and breaching and planting the diffuser with 30 seconds or less. You never get in a situation where you have 10 seconds or less and you have to plant the diffuser. You want to have the diffuser going down about that 10 to 20-second mark at the latest. Just so that way you don't have to worry about smoke. You don't have to worry about C4 baiting. At that 20-second mark, utility is important, but it's not as critical as it is at 10 seconds. At 10 seconds, a C4 or a smoke can pretty much just shut you out of the game. A little harder to do that at the 30-second mark. So 30 seconds ideal for you to push site. So pushing site downstairs and Kafe at 1 minute, you guys need to start rotating down. Clearly, at this point, you've roam cleared. You're going to leverage your up top for vertical gameplay here. That needs to be done very quickly. Okay, at the 40-second mark, this is when you have to make the decision. You got to breach site at this point. You got to do the best you can to breach. In this particular scenario, it looks like you're going to be forced to either push service, which is Bravo, through combination of bar door and thermiting into the freezer. And you have hatch control. So this is good. The synergy here can be pulled off to win this. So this is a prime example of how the intangibles work, right? You guys had the mana advantage, you had the utility advantage. Unfortunately, it took too much time to push site, and the defenders ultimately won. So let's take a look back at what are some opportunities you could be thinking about at that 40-second mark. When was the critical moment? Taking a look at the smoke here that covered this Monty smoke actually covered the smoke from the thermite's line of view. What are the chances? So some good synergy there at the end by DMG. They thought the smoke was there in prep, and they were trying to cut the smoke off and plant the diffuser. That's just unfortunate. The smoke rotated at just the right moment to make the play on the planter and pull out the round. So if you do that 10, maybe 15 seconds beforehand in push site, it's a whole different game. Round definitely goes to DMG. All right, so they went Fireplace Hall, Reading Room. I think this is the third best site on the map for two reasons. Number one, because it's newer, less teams know how to push it, in my opinion. And number two, by actually not having the site and training museum, both these sites, both Alpha and Bravo. Bravo is all internal. There's no window, so there's no external influence, which means defenders can't influence what happens on site from the outside. They have to come in the building to be able to have a significant impact on Bravo's site. When you play Fireplace Hall and Museum, there's a window here and a window in Museum, so you can easily have impact on both sites from the outside, which is a different dynamic in itself and should change how you hold the site. So by just moving one site to reading room, not having to worry about any windows, it completely changes the strategy you can play in regards to how you control this site. Especially if you open these walls up, you can play this from a distance and have heavy influence on what's going on. Also, it eliminates the hatch, right? And it makes vertical gameplay. One disadvantage, though, to this side is that the vertical gameplay and vertical control is higher risk. In this scenario, all you have to do is control piano, Christmas tree, cigar lounge room. I've used all three names there so you guys don't get confused. Cigar lounge with a piano in it to be able to control the hatch, which is the cutoff, the rotate between sides, but also control the vertical gameplay above museum. On this site, you have to play bar to control the vertical gameplay, and that's high risk because of the skylight. So it makes this a little harder to play from a top. But overall, I do think this is the third best site on this particular map. It should be played. Interesting setup by them. They're playing sites completely open. They're going to try to control sites from a distance. One of the weaknesses that they've already established. Oh, they fixed it. All right. They got a Mozzie here in the connector, or this close to cutoff. So cutoff in this particular situation is going to be this 90 hallway. This 90 hallway is going to allow you to control who rotates up red, who rotates down. Excuse me. Who comes up white, who comes down red, who comes through pillars, who jumps the pillars. I mean, this angle right here, and you can control it via white stairs. Who can run between Alpha and Bravo? It cuts the site in half. That's why it's called the cutoff, right? Cuts the rotations between sites, makes it very complicated for that to take place. This is the cutoff. It can be controlled from white stairs and or here. I think this is the better position to control if you have map control, which means if you don't have to worry about your flanks, this is it, because boom, you can influence both sides. While with white stairs, you're really only influencing who can go between in and out of Bravo. So it's not as important, right? I mean, Alpha can still rotate. You can still rotate Alpha through Train Museum, but that's something to keep in mind. So to prep this site, what you guys would do is roam clear up top real quick, push the roamers off the top floor, use vertical gameplay to push the Mozzie out of Train Museum, and once that takes place, secure the 90 hallway and then determine which site you want to plant, and then make rotations in that site, prep it for defuse, and then go in and plant the diffuser. Easier said than done. Great play by the team to make the call for the Thermite to use their utility here to push the roamers and cut this line of sight. So by opening this freezer wall up, now all of upstairs has been cut in half. One person with an ACOG control pretty much almost every rotate in and up and upstairs from this one room, and that's the way to do it. It's going to push the Valkyrie out, and just like that, DMG has control of the top floor. All right, so one thing to be conscientious of. So from a roam clear perspective, you want to complete your roam clear at about a minute 30. So when you have a minute 30 left on the clock, that's when you want to be finishing up your roam clear, going into the 1 minute mark. You guys just got done with the roam clear at 1 minute. Not a bad thing, but that means you need to start prepping site in about 20 seconds. So you're gonna have a elevated sense of urgency here to start with your vertical gameplay, and then to start transitioning people down to secure the cutoff. At about 40 seconds, you want to control the cutoff. If you don't have control of the cutoff at 40 seconds, you are behind, because at the 30-second mark, you want to be prepping the site for breach and planting the diffuser. So from a time perspective, you guys have taken a lot of space. You used the right amount of utility, but it's taken too long. Okay, so with 16 seconds, you're going to make a play on site. You don't control the cutoff, so by not controlling the cutoff, it's going to allow all the reinforcements to move here towards your push. Now they know the push is Bravo, so everyone is going to move all their utility and all the bodies towards Bravo here to deny this last second defuse plant. So well played by SCC. That's a critical here. That's why cutoff control is critical. Let's take a look. They're really disorganized. Only one person on Bravo. All of a sudden, with 22 seconds left, they know there's got to be a push coming. The call gets made that, hey, 2 tangos outside my door on Bravo side by the smoke. Everyone just books it, man. And because the cutoff is still under enemy control, I'm calling the enemies SCC, but excuse me, SCC control, the defenders can easily rotate in and just use all their utility and just throw everything they got here at this denial. And that's ultimately why you want to control the cutoff, to prevent that from happening. I'm going to take it back a little bit. I went a little too far ahead. Okay, so some of the same comments I've made in regards to attacking. First of all, SCC is giving a lot of real estate to the defenders, are giving a lot of real estate to the attackers. So the attackers want to come in, they want to take control of this as quick as possible. Cigar is huge. They've given Cigar. So right now, the entry fragger should be, using the hatches to secure control of Red Stairs and New Hatch and the Cigar Shop, pushing in, taking control of Cigar Lounge and Piano, using that thermite, number 1 right here, number 2 here, to open those long angles of sights. I think that might be soft. I can't tell from this point of perspective. Maybe it is. Yeah, this is soft, so no thermite required. Well, thermiting this, definitely. Maybe you can even thermite that if you know the Walmite's in there and try to push the Walmite out. Okay, definitely. So this is good. This angle got opened up. So order of operations is important. Let me go back. The way you take and prep a site is very important. There's a specific order that you got to do it in, either else you might put yourself at a disadvantage versus an advantage. All right, in this particular scenario, because this is blown out, they have line of sight to you, you got to be careful. It looks like they're looking for feet and they're trying to play the long ACOG from Heaven or Cocktail Bar. Something you need to be aware of. With that being said, what you want to do before you open this line of sight up, you want to make sure you have the right number of guns in this room. Usually it's 2 to 3. 1 to watch White Stairs, 1 to watch the freezer when it gets open, and then 1 to play the cross onto Bravo. That's usually what you need. Sometimes you can have 1 ACOG that can do the freezer and the cross, but that's a little, if you have 3, that's what you want to do. You want your 4th over here near Pillar having that cross onto Bravo and or denying Red Stairs as well. So when you're attacking this, first things first, this wall needs to get open to push the smoke out of this connector and force this smoke into either back to White Stairs or Cocktail or onto Bravo. Once that gets done and you have the long angles on this, you can open this wall up and then proceed. I would say because you have the thermite already here, it might be advantageous to open this wall up and frag out the Walmite or force him to, run down the White Stairs to push him even further away from sight. Okay, so after losing the thermite, that's tough. This wall's critical. So not being able to open up this wall is going to force you to have to frag out or deal with this guy in freezer. And playing the smoke here is a very smart move because from here he can smoke all the default plants. So he's going to be very hard to push because if you push him, I suspect he's got the shotgun. He can one tap anyone as they approach that bar. It's not a great situation to be in. So the best way to get rid of him is probably to do exactly what this sledge is about to do, is to try to push him from the back end bathroom. All right, guys. Well, hey, that's part one. I'll come back with part two here in the near future. It'll pick up where we are. So we're currently on round 6, and I will go from round 6 forward, moving forward here in part two. See you then.